I want to welcome you all to the Interagency Working Group for Leveraging Public Support for Problem Solving, a first convening of this nature for the U.S. Virgin Islands. My name is David Southgate, and I help communities and municipalities recycle land. As the Master of Ceremonies and moderator for today's forum, I also have the pleasure of being Senior Advisor to the Center for Creative Land Recycling, also known as CCLEAR. CCLEAR is a nonprofit technical assistance provider to the United States Environmental Protection Agency's Brownfields program, who is our collaborator in hosting today's meeting. Our ability to come together as federal, territorial, nonprofit, and community partners in one forum is remarkable. All of us are here today, experts in our field, and yet we're also pioneers and innovators. We meet in a virtual setting where being face-to-face behind a screen is really our safest option. But here we are. We'd rather be present face-to-face, and we're so happy to be here together with you and our audience that's listening in. My colleagues in CCLEAR and the US EPA extend our deepest appreciation for your affirming commitment to this first interagency working group for reimagining resilient communities in the US Virgin Islands. The people of the Caribbean and everywhere for that matter really want a better quality of life for themselves and for our communities, our elderly parents, and our children. For many, that includes continued cleanup and reconstruction, education, as well as resilient infrastructure after a cascade of economic, climate, and epidemiological disasters. Yet we are challenged with an exodus of productive workforces while struggling with the dual task of educating the future while caring for our elders. Abandonment and displacement tied to economic and population contractions make these matters even more pressing in the face of gentrification and the need for meaningful employment as well as historic and cultural preservation. In this complicated scenario, our communities are asking the following questions. How can the Caribbean fund more resilient infrastructure? How can communities and institutions acquire and rebuild derelict properties? How can resiliency, renewable power sources, workforce development, and cultural as well as historic preservation be factored into building back better? But before we begin to contemplate these questions, I'm going to ask all of our panelists to come on screen one by one as I say your names. You'll just need to take yourself off mute and say hello. First of all, I'd like to welcome Board President Mary Dima from Viac.
Hi, David.
Hi, thanks for being here. Hi. And also Frandel Gerard, Viac Advisory Board Member.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Jerville Larson, Advisory Board Member in Architecture and Construction and other topics.
Good afternoon.
Monica Marine, Viac Board Member, expert in art, culture, and historic preservationist.
Good afternoon, everybody.
As well as Monique Watson, Project Support, Grant Writing and Financing with Viac.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you all board members and staff members from Viac for being here today. We're ready to hear your project presentation. Now I'm going to bring on the guests here from the various agencies that are joining us today in this interagency working group. State Historic Preservation Office, Sean Krieger.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be here.
Good afternoon. Kimmy Bryce from the USDA Rural Development.
Yes, hello, pleasant good day to everyone.
Brian Lusher, U.S. National Endowment for the Arts Historic Preservation.
Hello, nice to see everyone.
From the U.S. Environmental Development Agency, Janelle Schindler. Administration, excuse me.
Yeah, EDA, US EDA, Economic Development Administration. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody.
Terry Wesley from the US EPA.
Yes, thanks, David. Good afternoon, everybody, and having a great discussion here today. So, thank you, family.
Jennifer Wallach from the National Park Service.
Hello, good afternoon.
I'd like to welcome to the stage Wendy Holmes, Art Space, nonprofit developer for the arts.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
From the Community Foundation of the Virgin Islands, Anna Wheatley.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for being here. And last but certainly not least, Chanel Mitchell from the US EPA.
Hi, David. This is Shani. Welcome to our Brownfields Caribbean Week. Thank you so much for participating, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanine, and thank you to everyone who's here present. Thank you so much. Well, our group of illustrious panelists, your task on this panel is quite simple and straightforward. You're going to be listening to an incredible 23-minute presentation from the Virgin Islands Architecture Center for Built Heritage and Crafts, or Viac, as we'll continue to refer to them. Viac is a future anchor institution in the town of Christiansted in the US Virgin Island of St. Croix, a place influenced by African and Danish traditions. Panelists, as you listen, please jot down your thoughts about specific resources at your agency that Viac might be able to tap right now, and make a note of your history as practitioners to provide advice that might benefit Viac as they continue to structure programs, win funding, and implement in order to embody their vision for a plan that you are about to hear. For those of you who are listening in the audience, what you are witnessing is a kind of innovation in public administration. By bringing together different levels of government and distinct agencies, we've created a really interesting forum for cross-pollination of ideas, for breaching information silos, and for reaching across the aisle from one agency to another to complement your administrative charters and public investments. This is a new age of efficiency for communities on the front line of climate change and economic transformations. For all of us, including the tireless board and staff of Viac, we'll learn new names, hear about programs. We're going to gather advice and gain an understanding of resources with an eye to sustainable community development. The audience of listeners here present, I challenge you to envision yourself in a future interagency working group, exactly where Viac is today. Sarah, we're ready to bring Viac on stage and present their presentation. And panelists, as you listen, consider your professional and agency experiences in the areas Viac mentions: historic preservation, workforce development, artistic and cultural preservation, resilience, construction and acquisition of sites, and more. Viac, you may begin.
Good afternoon. We would like to thank the Center for Creative Land Recycling and the Environmental Protection Agency for inviting us, the Virgin Islands Architecture Center for Built Heritage and Crafts, Inc., known as Viac, to be part of today's panel on leveraging public support for redevelopment, an interagency working group approach to problem solving. We are honored to have been selected to make this presentation. We hope this virtual gathering will be productive for all stakeholders. Representing Viac today are Mary Dima, Board Chair, who will answer questions about the overall project, Jerville Larson, Advisory Board Member, who will answer questions about architecture, construction, and related topics, and Frandel Gerard, Advisory Board Member, who will answer questions about community dynamics, culture, education, and curriculum. Providing support on the panel are grant writing and public relations consultant Monique Clendon and Watson, and Monica Marin, Board Member and expert in art, culture, and historic preservation. The Virgin Islands Architecture Center for Built Heritage and Crafts, known as Viac, is a nonprofit 501c3 with a focus on community economic development. Viac is restoring the old Barracks property in Christiansted, St. Croix, into an urban campus and education lab in collaboration with the Historic Houses of Denmark NGO. The center will research, teach, and present the architectural and building crafts traditions unique to the Virgin Islands and the Caribbean. Viac is administered by a board of directors and an advisory board that consists of experts in architecture, culture, education, and community development. Viac is a new entity without its own track record in federal financial management and reporting. So we have partnered with PLACE, a national nonprofit, for their expertise in financial grant management and reporting, community development, and historic preservation. Viac envisions that the transformation of the old Barracks property will be a catalyst for the evolution of Christiansted Town. We hope that the center will become an anchor property for a culture and arts economic development corridor, which will provide opportunities for workforce development and training, small business development, and cultural heritage tourism, with a special focus on the African-Danish historic aesthetic found in Virgin Islands towns and the architectural preservation practices found throughout the Caribbean. Viac will offer a 2-year associate's degree in architecture in association with schools in Puerto Rico, the United States, Ghana, and Denmark. It will offer an associate's degree in building crafts such as metalwork, painting, carpentry, cabinet making, masonry, and certifications in draftsmanship, as well as classes in Virgin Islands history and culture, small business development, and entrepreneurship. Viac will research and teach sustainable and resilient building methodologies that address climate change, particularly the issues that face the Virgin Islands and the Caribbean. What challenges are we trying to address? St. Croix and the entire U.S. Virgin Islands is in a period of transition. The socioeconomic structure that provided stability and prosperity in the latter half of the 20th century has eroded, and new approaches are needed to reinvigorate and re-energize the built environment and the community that lives and thrives there. Recent economic pressures caused by the 2013 refinery closure, the 2017 hurricanes, and the 2020 COVID pandemic have accelerated the need for innovative and effective approaches to the socioeconomic revival of Christiansted. In 2018, the Urban Land Institute made a key recommendation in their report on Christiansted on how to address the economic challenges facing the town. It encouraged Virgin Islands leadership to make interventions that support the existing physical, social, cultural, economic, and environmental fabric with a clear-cut plan and strategy. The report states that the community should enhance and grow tourism around the island's undervalued assets, land, sea, and other natural environments, historic architectural fabric, unique cultural character, history, and emerging cottage industries. After the 2017 hurricanes, there was a shortage of skilled local workers, and off-island workers were brought in to do recovery work. According to reports, this inflated the cost of living by as much as 400%, with rental prices rising sharply, pricing residents out of the market. With the fear of gentrification in Christiansted and the other historic towns in the Virgin Islands, the community needs a conscious response to protect family properties and other cultural spaces before they are developed without regard for historic preservation. It is imperative for the territory to empower local stakeholders with the skills to become part of the rebuilding effort to keep recovery dollars flowing within the Virgin Islands economy. Viac's proposals aligns with these recommendations and will be an important step towards the future. Graduates of the center will become active stakeholders in restoration efforts that can provide affordable housing that will allow residents to work and live in our historic towns. Located on the northeastern coast of the largest of the U.S. Virgin Islands, Christiansted is an over 250-year-old town. Christiansted was once the sugar capital of the Danish West Indies and the leading exporter of sugar to the world. Since the Virgin Islands became an American territory in 1917, the town has experienced both boom and bust. It flourished during the 1960s to 1990s with thriving industries in oil refining, rum production, tourism, and agriculture. According to the 2019 USVI Disaster Recovery Plan, it has been devastated by the 2013 closure of the Hovensa oil refinery, with a loss of over 2,000 jobs, and 2 Category 5 hurricanes in September of 2017, with $11.5 billion in damage to homes, schools, businesses, utilities, and infrastructure. According to the COVID-19 Economic Impact Report, small business owners report losses of between 25 and 75% of gross revenues for 2020, and an estimated 63% reduction in the workforce. Both the 2010 census and the 2014 Virgin Islands Community Survey show a declining and an aging of St. Croix's population. A little less than 50,000 people live on the 84 square mile island, and 46.3% are low and moderate income individuals. Persons whose yearly income does not exceed $27,850. A third of St. Croix census tracts, including Christiansted Town, is designated as low and moderate income areas. Educationally, 25% of the population did not complete high school. 39% were high school graduates, 13.1% had a bachelor's degree, and 5% had a graduate degree or higher. The 2015 Virgin Islands Community Economic Development Strategy states that deteriorating economic conditions and loss of job opportunities were responsible for a 5% drop in population between 2000 and 2010. The triple trauma of the next decade, 2010 to 2020, the refinery closure, 2 Category 5 storms, and the COVID pandemic has impacted the population even more. The median age has increased from 33.4 in 2000 to 39.7 in 2012. The number of people aged 55 to 64 increased by 38%, and the number of people aged 65 and older increased by 49%. So how does Viac address the challenges to the people, built and natural environment, and economy of Christiansted? According to the 2018 Urban Land Institute report, the people of St. Croix are the island's most valuable asset. It calls the people resilient survivors who love their island home. It states that despite the challenges of generational talent flight, a declining and aging population, a high poverty rate, double-digit unemployment, and increased crime, violence, and substance abuse, the island is spawning a new generation of hard-working entrepreneurs. Viac is poised to address all of these issues. The Virgin Islands community is aging because young people have few post-high school opportunities for education, training, and employment. If their interests are not met by what's offered by the University of the Virgin Islands, students go abroad for education and often settle in areas where they attend college because of job opportunities there. By creating a school that offers an associate's degree in architecture, Viac will open a new avenue for students, particularly those in vocational school, and for those interested in art, culture, history, and architecture. By offering classes in small business development and entrepreneurship, Viac will give students the means to become self-sufficient. By creating more education, training, jobs, and business ownership opportunities on the island, fewer young people will have to go abroad to create a livelihood for themselves and their families. By creating a pipeline of education, training, and job development, Viac can help strengthen families and communities. By producing graduates who can do metalwork, masonry, woodwork, painting, carpentry, cabinet making, and draftsmanship necessary to rehabilitate Virgin Islands towns and other construction projects across the island, Viac will play an important role in the revitalization of the built environment. The renovation of built heritage stock will provide new spaces that can be occupied by residents and businesses. By offering a curriculum that revives traditional building and craft techniques, teaches history and culture, and celebrates our unique identity, Viac will contribute to the preservation of culture and heritage. By researching and teaching sustainable and resilient building methodologies that address climate change, particularly issues that face the Virgin Islands and the Caribbean, Viac will contribute to the conservation of the natural environment. In the short term, Viac will impact the economy by hiring local workers to renovate the old barracks property. In the long term, the center will create jobs in administration, maintenance, and teaching. Once operational, it will produce graduates who will become craftsmen, business owners, and contributors to the local tax base, and become a stabilizing factor in the social fabric of the community. Viac will impact the quality of the tourism product by helping to refurbish the built heritage, provide meaningful occupations, business opportunities, and provide a curriculum that teaches history and culture that can be accessed by teachers, taxi drivers, and the general public. Viac will create a cadre of craftsmen trained to repair and renovate buildings on the island after each storm. Viac will also serve as a community shelter and communications hub during and after natural disasters. The proposal for an architecture center that focuses on the built heritage of the Virgin Islands came from a competitive town planning charrette sponsored by the Virgin Islands Economic Development Authority. The community agreed that a school that studied and recognized traditions while creating opportunity for skills training, job creation, entrepreneurial activity, and economic development could lead to the revitalization of Christiansted. At the centennial of the transfer of the Virgin Islands from Danish to American rule in 2017, architects and cultural activists from the Virgin Islands and Denmark formed the In Search of Identity project and pledged collaboration that focused on shared heritage. 2 nonprofits were formed, and the St. Croix nonprofit became Viac. The winning town plan concept was adopted as the model, and the Danish government and the Virgin Islands legislature provided seed money for Viac's organizational activities through grants to the St. Croix Foundation. The old barracks property, located at 21, 22, and 23 Hospital Street, Christiansted, St. Croix, consists of a large compound with old trees and structures of different age, size, and material. They are marked on the map from 1 to 10. Number 1 and 2, the ruin on the corner of Hospital Street, the L-shaped building, and the large staircase with the adjacent historic walls that connect the 2 buildings are the main targets of the renovation. The property is on the northeastern side of town, east of the Christiansted National Historic Site and south of Gallows Bay. Built in the 1700s by the Danish government, it has served as a hospital, administrative offices, and a barracks for soldiers. Under American rule, it was used as a public high school, administrative offices for the departments of public safety, education, and labor. After Hurricane Hugo in 1989, it fell into ruin and disrepair, and 1 building is currently in use by the Department of Education. It is owned by the Virgin Islands Department of Property and Procurement. According to the In Search of Identity project business plan, Hospital Street has many stunning, dilapidated, and ruinous structures that should be restored and rehabilitated. With this architectural conservation and adaptive use project, Hospital Street would become a catalyst to incentivize other private property owners to rehabilitate their structures and rejuvenate the streetscape. Initial designs for the center were created in 2017 by Danish and Virgin Islands architects. They envision an atelier, craft workshops, a large and small auditorium, cafe, exhibition space, offices, research archives, and living units for guest professors. It imagines that the historic wall with iron gate will become an entrance to a garden with trees and a water fountain. Preliminary estimates for architectural, engineering, design and construction, and curriculum design are $10 million for building costs, architecture, engineering, construction management, furniture and interiors, professional collaborations on curriculum, and endowment. Annual operation and maintenance costs are approximately $727,000 for payroll, rent, utilities, public relations and advertising, office supplies, legal and accounting fees, insurance, equipment maintenance, business taxes, fees and licenses, repairs and maintenance. The Viac business plan anticipates that once constructed and operational, the center can generate approximately $1,039,104 annually with income from tuition and fees, entrance fees and venue rental, gift shop revenue, program grants, fundraising, and online commerce. Viac is currently fundraising for phase 1 of our project. Estimated phase cost is $1.5 million for development of a strategic master plan, site stabilization, asbestos and lead paint abatement, architecture and engineering fees, and curriculum design. Viac utilized the seed money from the Virgin Islands Legislature and the Danish government to set up the nonprofit and 501c3, conduct meetings with stakeholders, set up banking and federal funding registrations, develop a website, social media presence, and other marketing materials and initiatives, and hire a grant writer. We currently have a funding application before the Department of Interior's Office of Insular Affairs for $300,000 for technical assistance for project development, a feasibility study, and the development of a strategic master plan. Last fall, we applied to the Enterprise Community Partners Capacity Building Grant for $100,000 for operational funds for staff and equipment, and to the Community Foundation of the Virgin Islands Friends and Family Grant for $100,000 to begin our virtual cultural history initiative as a means to enhance our community engagement activities. Both were unsuccessful. We have also submitted official comment to the Community Development Block Grant Mitigation Plan narrative to the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority and plan to apply for funding once the application is available this summer. We have submitted applications to the Environmental Protection Agency for inclusion in the targeted assessment process and have a negotiated lease pending signature with the Department of Property and Procurement. We have discussed funding opportunities with the Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, the Department of Commerce, EDA, the Environmental Protection Agency, Brownfields, and the Department of Interior's National Park Service and Historic Preservation. We are exploring opportunities with the Department of Health and Human Services for community economic development and the National Endowment for the Humanities for infrastructure and capacity building. We will develop other funding mechanisms through online interactive events, an online store, and a donor support base. We are seeking Community Reinvestment Act partners and developing a strategy to attract funding from private investors and foundations. We have become an affiliate member of the National Alliance of Community Economic Development Associations. We have an ongoing relationship with the St. Croix Foundation and are partnered with Crucian Heritage and Nature Tourism's Building Arts Institute. we are exploring partnerships with the St. Croix Career and Technical Education Center and becoming a certified local government under the Virgin Islands Office of Historic Preservation. Viac has received letters of support from Virgin Islands Governor Albert Bryan, Delegate to Congress Stacey Plaskett, members of the Virgin Islands Legislature to include President Donna Fret Gregory, Secretary Genevieve Whitaker, Finance Chair Kurt Vialet, and from the National Park Service Caribbean Project Manager of the Historic Preservation Training Center, Daniel Ritter. Viac continues to build on its foundations and organizational structure to realize this project. In the short term, we have a need of $1.5 million to complete Phase 1 of our development, and in the long term, we have a need of $10 million to complete construction and implement our programs. How can you help us?
Viac, thank you very much for that presentation. We, as a group of panelists now, our job is, in about the space of 45 minutes, to concisely share your general funding that might apply for this project or technical support information, as well as any practical advice you might have for our colleagues at Viac. Again, I want to thank Viac for this incredibly smart presentation. It's right on point. And I also want to thank my colleague at the Center for Creative Land Recycling, Joelle Greenland, for assisting Viac in the development of this proposal today. Terry Wesley, our friend at the United States Environmental Protection Agency. This is a project that at its nature, we want to start by verifying the environmental conditions on that site prior to jumping in and acquiring it, as well as beginning development. But I'm wondering if you might have some other thoughts about EPA potential role in this project.
Yes, David, and thank you again. That was a fantastic presentation. To me, that really speaks at the heart of the Biden-Harris administration when it comes to the topic of environmental justice, as well as the ongoing work that's happening with respect to recovery following the post disasters of 2017 hurricane season. For us, and I heard during the presentation a reference made to one of our programs, the Targeted Brownfield Assessment Program. So this would like to say first, for the most part, EPA from its Brownfields program has various different types of grant programs available, as well as technical assistance. What we hear currently in this presentation is the topic of, for EPA right now, is assessments. That is to really to sort of garner and conduct background check into the historical level of potential contamination that may be on that site. We heard about asbestos and lead that may be two major areas for consideration in conducting a survey. I will note that currently, and my colleague that's here with us here today, Shanine Mitchell, we've already begun those conversations with Viac, and we've discussed the utilization of our Targeted Brownfield Assessment Program. It's called TBA for us, and we have what's really free contract support available to assist an entity like Viac and others where they may not currently say own the site, may be interested in particular property, just wants to have that sort of due diligence done. And be able to have an assessment prepared, a technical assessment that could help then for that entity to be able to move forward and have sort of that capacity just to say going out in terms of identifying abilities to purchase a property, as well as remediate a site, and then furthermore go on towards redevelopment. So we do see that as a potential pathway forward as well. We do have resources available with the Virgin Islands Department of Planning and Natural Resources. We do share a common theme in terms of our brownfield programs. So EPA supports VIDPNR, and in terms of its development of a state response program, And what that means for those here is that they can do a myriad of things that sort of mirror what EPA can do. I mean, so they could do an inventory. They can also do assessment work. So I know Dr. Kalisha Pell that works at VIDPNR is a great resource for folks to consider and contacting. So we could sort of work in tandem. That is on our end, considering the targeted brownfield assessment program, utilizing that resource. Perhaps also, like I said, identifying connection with Dr. Pell and VIDPNR through the what's called the Circle 128 or State Response Program that can conduct similar work. And of course, moving forward, if there's sort of a consideration to apply for funding, EPA does have what's known as a site-specific, assessment grant that's available for folks to apply, and that could go up to 200,000. But if a much larger series of sites may be a part of this particular area, that could go up to 300,000. So there's a variety of different resources that we have available, along with C-Clear being there as a technical assistance provider, and also various other technical assistance contracts we have in the land revitalization arena that could talk about green infrastructure and other things, which I hear coupled with what's being presented in the presentation. I think there's a lot of room for us to sort of dance together on moving forward on this project. So thank you so much, David, for allowing me to give a few remarks.
Barry, thank you very much for that contribution. This project is clearly historic and cultural, and we have 3 agency representatives here on the line with us today who can speak about the historic cultural preservation experiences that they've got, as well as technical assistance and funding support. The interesting thing about EPA's program is that it's early capital that's high-risk capital sometimes, because you don't know necessarily as an organization what are we going to find in terms of environmental conditions and cleanup. And these are kind of pre-development works that are very difficult to find funding for. And so it's great that the US EPA can step in this way. Sean Krieger, who's here with us today. I'm wondering if, Sean, if you might be able to speak about your experience in historic preservation and renovations and what expertise your agency might be able to bring to this project to assist them. And then I'll call on Brian, as well as Brian Lusher from the National Endowment for the Arts' Historic Preservation area, as well as Jennifer Wellock, who's with the National Park Service, which obviously runs the historic preservation certification programs.
Hi, good afternoon, David, and thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this discussion. It is an exciting discussion because Viac will answer a need that we clearly have in our community for skilled artisans to work on the restoration of our historic buildings. We have those skills now, but as you've seen from the presentation, there is a greater need for such assistance. And so I really see a tremendous value and asset that Viac can bring to not only St. Croix, but also the Virgin Islands as a whole. The Virgin Islands State Historic Preservation Office in the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, we can bring the technical assistance for historic preservation to Viac as they set up their program. The SHPO is staffed with technical experts in the area of architecture, history, and archaeology. And so we would hope and would be a willing participant to provide, whatever level of technical assistance that we can to this program as it grows. Funding also is a possibility, but that is more limited than our technical guidance would be, only because our program is a small program from a funding standpoint. And so the contributions would be reflected in that limited capacity. But where we may fall short in funding, as I said, we will definitely be able to provide a wealth of technical guidance. Not only material-wise, but also just us as professionals, working along with this project. I have seen examples of similar programs on the U.S. mainland. There are cities like Charleston, South Carolina, Boston. There are similar schools like this, and they're proven to be successful, and they will become an integral part of the community, a part of the historic districts. And I can see it definitely foster not only developing our young people and the skill sets for architecture and the traditional building crafts, but also, as the program well pointed out, new business entrepreneurs and just community residents as a whole. So I thank you. I look forward to further discussion on the topic.
Sean, just as a detail, how would Viac or anybody who's listening in the audience for that matter access those technical assistance resources that you just mentioned?
Oh, thank you, David. They can contact our offices, whether by telephone or email. We are located on St. Croix and St. Thomas. On St. Thomas, we're in the Charlotte-Motley Historic District at the Fort Christian National Historic Landmark Site. And on St. Croix, we're located in the historic town of Frederiksted at the Fort Frederick National Historic Landmark Site. So they're always welcome to visit those locations. We have a number of technical guides that we can provide, but we also have materials that can be sent, electronically.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sean.
You're welcome.
Brian, would you like to add to Sean's comments?
Sure, absolutely. And firstly, thank you so much for that presentation. I am super excited about the direction you're going in, and I think it's just fantastic. And all of the structure you've given it so far is really inspiring. I am the Historic Preservation Officer for the National Endowment for the Arts, where I review our grant activities across the country. Having in fact even worked with Frendel and Sean before on a grant on the island a couple of years ago related to design. I think it was the actual same district, the Hospital Street District. However, what I've also been doing since May of 2018 is deploying to Puerto Rico to assist with recovery efforts, specifically as they relate to historic preservation and the cultural landscape, arts organizations, archaeology, architecture, and so forth. Because the Puerto Rican Disaster Recovery Report listed cultural heritage as a priority. And I've been going down under the Department of Interior's Natural and Cultural Resources Recovery Support Function for a while. And in the last year and a half or so, we have begun focusing on capacity building because, like your island, Puerto Rico has also identified a great deal of historic properties and a tremendous spectrum of cultural heritage, as well as a lack of expertise on the island to be able to repair such properties in an appropriate way going forward. So the scenario is very similar. And what really got my attention among so many interesting points in your presentation was the educational aspect, the degree, the associate degree in architecture, as well as all of the traditional trades. And that is what we have been focusing on in Puerto Rico, which again had identified a similar effort. And where Puerto Rico has gone with that is what I would like to share with you guys, which is looking into registered apprenticeship programs under the Department of Labor. Now, I mean, given all of the work that you've done so far, you are almost there. Now there are things to consider with a registered apprenticeship program. It's got to be registered with the Department of Labor, which is a fairly clear-cut process. I can tell you from my experience with the Department of Labor that they really are focusing on apprenticeship programs. And many of you may already know that there are a number of traditional trades programs throughout the United States. This is a focus nationally. The Advisory Council on Historic Preservation has established a traditional trades working group on which I have been sitting because of our work in Puerto Rico. But yet, something to consider is that there are additional program requirements when you register an apprenticeship with the Department of Labor program. And they necessarily include three vital elements, being students, employers, and a sponsor. A sponsor in an apprenticeship program is an entity that recruits and tracks the education of the apprenticeship students who are focusing on any number of the traditional trades. But you guys are focusing on some of the very same trades that Puerto Rico is. And the exciting news is that Puerto Rico has already registered traditional trades apprenticeships with the Department of Labor, the very first ever. And they are now working on the process to implement it. As you can imagine, there's a lot of moving parts and it's somewhat complicated, but the basic elements of focusing on identifying employers and also students, as well as a sponsor. This all fell under the umbrella of the Institute of Puerto Rican Culture, which has established the Escuela Taller to take this on. And so Puerto Rico is in a place where they are beginning to form stronger momentum in terms of focusing on this, but I see absolutely parallel tracks with what's going on here. And though it would not necessarily be funding from the National Endowment from the Arts, I would really recommend that you take a look at apprenticeship.gov, which is the Department of Labor apprenticeship website. And I will say that on behalf of Puerto Rico, I have been keeping a close eye on any grant opportunities. And during the pandemic, there have not been many. But when there are grant opportunities, it's a sizable amount of money to both develop apprenticeship programs and also to help fund them, because Department of Labor apprenticeship money can be used by employers to supplement the extraordinary costs of training apprentices. So, that's something to consider. And again, there was the last Department of Labor grant opportunity I saw closed about a year ago, but it was aimed at youth apprenticeship programs, which it sounds like this one could be a very natural fit. And so that's kind of what really gets me about this. I mean, you're on the cresting the wave with most of the country right now and looking at traditional trades and expanding them, because it is, it's a need across the country and obviously more acute on your island. And so, again, there are no grant opportunities out there right now, and I'm not sure when the Department of Labor will issue more, but it sounds to me that you've already done a great deal of the legwork that the Department of Labor would look for in discussing with you traditional trades apprenticeships, if that's something that you wish to pursue. The other element about apprenticeships is that they are usually looking for them to adhere to industry standards. In this case, an industry standard that's nationwide could be the Secretary of the Interior standards, for instance. That would be a natural fit to blend it in with the Department of Labor. Anyway, I just, would be happy to discuss this with you guys, in future conversations, but really excited to hear what you're doing. And I hope this helps. Thank you.
Brian, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experience with the team from Viac. And I saw Jennifer sort of nodding her head. Jennifer, well.
Hi, everybody. I want to thank you for inviting me. We're so excited about this project. I hope you can participate via the SHPO's office, which is where Sean works, through their grant programs that they have right now. My office and the National Park Service, we are one of the funders for the Preservation Office down in the Virgin Islands. So we provide money from the Historic Preservation Fund, which is, that is not taxpayer dollars, that is offshore oil leased money that goes out, taking one resource away and putting it in another resource that can't be replicated, like historic preservation. So our funding goes out to the public via the state historic preservation offices and the tribal historic preservation offices on the mainland. So that's one section of our money. And Sean, I know he has done some projects in the enterprise zone areas and has looked at things. Plus he's also a technical wizard with preservation. So definitely working with the state office is our first, stop. We also in our office have a number of competitive grants. Right now we have 2 disaster grants running. Of course, Harvey, Irma, Maria being one, and the other being Florence, U2, and Michael. So the Harvey, Irma, and Maria money was already competed for by the Virgin Islands. They did receive a large, essentially a block grant. And then it is up to them to run a competition, which I believe is in its part 1 stages now. So hopefully folks got in on that. And, you know, I know this is probably one of the projects we hope to see, or particularly this neighborhood. This is the type of thing that will bring back jobs and bring back a viable tax base and things like that. So we're excited about work happening. I know it's taken a long time. The disasters were some time ago, but it's on its way. That money is coming to all of you. So that's one of our competitive grant programs. And so that works as the Park Service. Sean's office competed for it. They received an allocation, and then they are going to run a sub-grant program themselves. So the Park Service will be kind of the oversight, but it will really be the state office running it. Then our other competitive grants, we have a number right now. We have the African American Civil Rights Grant, which is no longer confined to civil rights activity. So it's now the African American experience through history for the, so I see that as an opportunity for all of you. There is a lot of money in that program right now coming up. I believe we have 17 million. So grants are block, they would be considered history grants. You could do exhibit, you could do curriculum planning, you could do brochures, pamphlets, things like that. That's a $50,000 cap. Or you can do bricks and mortar, which right now is at 500,000, but I believe will go up in the next coming year based on our sad escalation in construction costs across the entire country. So I believe that money will probably be capped a little bit higher. So those are grants that are available. That should come out in the fall of 2021. I recommend you put in the National Park Service CFDA number in your grants.gov search so that you can see what comes up, because we don't even know when things will be announced. The other grant program we have is something called Underrepresented Community Grants. And those are predominantly to increase nominations to the National Register for communities that were not normally thought of in the old, big mansion kind of big vision National Register. So we're looking for those smaller vernacular properties, those ones that really matter in a community that often get overlooked. So that is a nomination grant, and those are also at $50,000. What else do we have? We have so many grants right now. I'm trying to think of all the ones we have. I have a short presentation, but I can send that to you, David, so that you can have it with all the different numbers and grant programs. But one of the things we have done is worked with state offices to produce training videos. And this sounds kind of like it might be on the way. So one of the ones we did was with Kalamazoo, where they did a Windows workshop. And they essentially wanted to have, they had a real lack of craftsmen in the town doing the work, and they were getting bad projects. So the state put together a workshop where they actually trained people, gave them a certificate, and then they could go out and be approved by the local commissions as somebody who's able to do the work correctly. So that's one of the ways that the money can flow as well. And that was through our certified local government program. But, and I believe right now there is no such program in the Virgin Islands, because for many years we thought we could not do it there in the territories. But Sean has been working in the Viac, trying to figure out a way to get a similar program set up at the state office. So with that, I will end because there's a lot more speakers, but feel free to reach out and contact me for any questions. And again, David, I'll send you that PowerPoint.
I'll keep an eye out for it. Jennifer, thank you very much for being here today and for sharing those comments. And if Viac wanted to get some technical assistance about responding to some of these grants before the notification of availability of funds, could they do that through you?
Sure, anybody can reach out to us. We also have a general inbox as well, and we have a bulletin. I can sign you up for that. That kind of says, hey, this one's about to close, get that application in. So
I bet Monique would
Yeah.
like that. Okay.
It helps to have a reminder, right?
Yes.
There's just
All
too
right.
much going on.
Thank you so much. We've invited Art Space, Wendy Holmes, here today. She was on a panel yesterday speaking about, in general, the creative reuse and adaptive use of historic structures. They've got a 30+ year experience base and projects across the United States in historic preservation and historic readaptive reuse. And I just wanted to bring Wendy on to share her expertise in development. I thought that would be a nice addition for this panel today. And thank you, Wendy, for being here.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you. This is quite a panel and quite a project. So the complexity of the project also means that you're eligible for making the case for all different kinds of funding. So that's why all of us are part of this panel, right? We're not a grant maker, but we seek grants a lot, both from private and public sources, and own and operate now 54 projects across the mainland, and are working on one in San Juan now too. So we're learning about resources in the Caribbean and in Puerto Rico specifically. One of those resources that I wanted to just say a few words about that is also available in the Virgin Islands is the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. And combining that with the Historic Tax Credit Program can be monumental in terms of the equity that it brings into these projects. Now, we have found, at least in Puerto Rico, that there aren't a lot of people with experience in knowing how to combine them or even accessing either one of those. So I'm here as someone who, with my colleagues, have sought both of those tools and many others, including EPA grants and workforce development grants, art-related grants, and pieced them together. It's pretty typical that our projects have 10 to 15 different sources, and many of them government sources. So I'm here to demystify the process for you. ArtSpace consults with others who to help them with their projects, so we can be a resource to tell you how to talk to you about how to combine these resources. And then another one that just comes to my mind is the New Markets Tax Credit Program, and that is a source of equity. Someone on this panel would have to tell me if folks in the Virgin Islands can access that, because that's something I don't know about. But typically, that is equity that can be used especially for non-residential components of projects. So if anyone is able to answer that in the chat or what have you, but that's another thing that could be looked into for this project as well. So I'll stop there unless there's something more specific, David.
Wendy, thank you very much for sharing that experience. I think it's great that you, as a nonprofit developer for the arts with the whole ArtSpace team, could come here today and really talk about this, rehabilitation, historic rehabilitation for the arts, because it intersects really well with what Viac is positioning here. So thank you very much for those comments. Appreciate that. And we'll make sure that we connect you guys behind the scenes, so you guys can continue that conversation, because you have a great resource for sure. We also have today EDA, which I know has some workforce development pieces, and Frandel's commented here as well. Thank you, Frandel. Yes, we're able to use new market tax credits and enterprise zone tax credits. So thank you for that, Frandel. So I'd like to bring on our colleague from EDA, Janelle Schindler, to speak a little bit about what you're hearing in these themes that are coming up, and what you thought about the presentation and how you might be able to assist through technical assistance or grants.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I have actually spoke with VIEDA about this project, and it's a great project. VIEDA and Viac about this particular project, and there are many, many ways that the US EDA can support this. I'll talk a little bit about our main buckets of funding. We have our Economic Adjustment Assistance Program, and that is our largest bucket of funding. Most of our Disaster supplementals are coming in under that funding. Our CARES Act with $1 billion and our ARPA program that just received $3 billion. Now, those notifications of funding are not out yet because that was obviously just signed. But we do expect this summer that we will start seeing notifications of funding for that $3 billion as well. Those are all economic adjustments, and we can certainly look at multiple ways to fund portions of this project under the economic adjustment. We have public works, we have planning and local technical assistance. We can certainly help with that, with the strategic plan specifically under that program. We have a build to scale. We have research and national technical assistance. If this is doing any research, we can certainly talk about funding under that. And then we have trade adjustment assistance, and that obviously wouldn't be part of this. But there are so many avenues that we may be able to support with this particular project. You know, we can build buildings. We can have, you know, we have construction and non-construction. So we can do plans. We can provide technical assistance, and we can build buildings. Really, the only thing that we cannot do is provide housing. So we can have office space, but nobody can live there. So there's a lot of ways that the US EDA can fund this particular project. Now, of course, we're going to be looking at this from an economic standpoint, not a historic standpoint. So we're going to be looking at job creation and economic development. And like I said, we could, if there is research being done at the facility, we can certainly look at that piece. But we would be looking at this from an economic development standpoint, and we can provide technical assistance for many things as it relates to job creation and economic development. So that, you know, that's really where we're looking at this. So I've kind of, you know, when I've been speaking with VIEDA and Viac about this particular project, we're kind of looking at the pieces where US EDA can support. And I feel very positive about the ability for Viac and VIEDA to apply for some of our funding opportunities for this particular project. It really does align in many ways when it comes to economic development. So it's a wonderful project. And I believe, obviously, you know, VIEDA has been a good partner with US EDA. And so, you know, we already have that great relationship. So this is something that we could certainly look into supporting.
Janelle, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm wondering, on behalf of our friends at Viac, if there are any kind of matching requirements that they might need to be aware of as they line up their thoughts about which applications to apply for.
Sure. If they are applying for one of our regular appropriations, this is not a disaster appropriation like the CARES or the ARPA that was just signed. It's a 50-50 match. If we are funding through a disaster supplemental, we can fund, typically it's a 80% from EDA, 20% from the grantee, but what happens is we can go up to 100%. So if you can show us your economic distress and you are really making a huge impact when it comes to a disaster. So I'm talking about putting people back to work immediately, or having a huge impact on the economy in a very short term time frame, then we can go up to 100%. And we have gone up to 100% here in the territory on some of our 2018 after our Irma and Maria disaster projects. We have funded 100%. So it is possible. It really depends on the impact of your project and how quickly you're going to affect the economy.
Thank you so much, Janelle. Kimmy Bryce from USDA Rural. What do you think about everything you've heard right now? And where do you picture the possibility of USDA perhaps having programs or technical assistance that might be able to assist?
Yes, hi. Pleasant good morning once again. All right. Yes, USDA Rural Development boasts a commitment to helping to improve the economy and quality of life for all rural America. And the good thing is that the US Virgin Islands, the entire USVI is considered rural. So all programs, there would be eligibility as far as applicants concerned. To do this, we have over 50 programs under 4 major umbrellas. We have our business program umbrella, our community program umbrella, utilities program, and housing programs. And we do this through a number of grants, which I think is the direction that everyone is heading and searching for as many grants as possible. But we do also offer, and I think for the long-term planning of Viac, loans as a possibility. Now, we're looking at the pre-development stage, of course, to long-term stage. I took a good listen as to what we're facing as far as the applicant type and the project needs. And I just pulled some of the programs that I thought may be beneficial. And just for everyone, I posted in the chat group for both the panelists and the attendees a link to our website that would give a little more insight on all of our programs. While not all might be beneficial for the program right now, at least you can learn of the things that rural development has available, okay? So some of the programs that I thought would be geared toward this project, the first one being our Rural Business Development Grant. This is one of our smaller grants. It's a $50,000 grant, and it's a competitive grant, which is designed to support targeted technical assistance, training, and other activities leading to the development of, or expansion of small and emerging private businesses. So I think this would definitely be geared toward this project. Now, it is an annual grant. It is, for this year, it was open from February 4th and it closed March 31st. So while that's a small window, we do provide to any interested applicants the prior year's application so that they can get an idea as to what is expected. It typically doesn't change, and they can be ready for when that small window is open, get that submitted. I mean, this grant can be used for just a myriad of things, training and technical assistance, community economic development projects, feasibility studies, business plans, leadership and entrepreneur training. And again, it's a small grant. It is a competitive grant. And unfortunately, it's only a one award, $50,000 per year. So the most successful applicant would receive that $50,000. The one that I also think would be beneficial is our distance learning grant. That one can be up to $1 million. Okay, there's no match required for either of these grants. And for this particular grant, it is currently open. It was open April 5th, and I believe it's going to be closed somewhere at the end of June. And this is also made available on an annual basis. Oh yes, June 4th is the deadline for this one. So it may be too soon, of course, for this particular funding period, but certainly to keep this in mind, especially with the educational aspect of the project. I know you're going to have communication with places that are away from the Virgin Islands, and since we're considered rural, you definitely can utilize this to have to acquire technology and training necessary to connect educational and with professionals that can provide those services to the territory. All right. Now, again, when we spoke about grants, I also have to speak about loans and long-term development. We may have availability of our community facility loan. This can be up to $10 million. And of course, you would have to see that the applicant has repayment ability. So I think that may come at a little period down the line, but we certainly should keep this open. There is possible grant for a tie-in with the loan, but it's usually a loan and then an add-on grant. There's no set amount on the grants. We just have to see what eligibility would show. We also have the business and industry loan. This is a loan guarantee, so it would require the involvement of a commercial lender. It's usually a larger scale loan. We don't compete with SBA. So this loan, you can actually go up to $25 million. And as I said, it requires a commercial lender's involvement. We do not do any direct lending for this particular resource of funding. Okay, and those are the ones that I thought jumped out immediately. Like I said, we do a host of many programs, but I didn't see any that immediately fit with the applicant type or project type. But as we speak further, we may be able to fine tune and see there was something that I may have misunderstood or something that you said, no, hey, look, this is something that I think we can apply for and we can discuss this further one-on-one or with other meetings to follow.
Kimmy, thank you so much.
Yes.
We're really developing here in this conversation, I think, a visualization for a capital stack, not only for development, but also the resources for the job training components and the historic preservation, the cultural preservation that are so key to the vision that Viac's laid out before us. I want to give a shout out to Shanine Mitchell, who is here on the line, and just super brief, Shanine, if you would, and then we'll go to Anna from the Community Foundation for the Virgin Islands, because you were an early entry into funding and supporting Viac. Shanine?
Yes, thank you, David. I promise I'll be brief because I think we're down to like 4-minute stretch here. So I just want to talk briefly about our environmental workforce development and job training program. It's a great program. We are going to be gearing up for our FY22 applications, request for applications. It's coming out this summer, so this is really good timing. Our grant is designed to recruit, train, and place individuals that are impacted by brownfield. So a lot of what's been discussed definitely applies, especially as far as doing green construction. So that's great. So please check out our exhibit booth. There's a lot of information, but I also have my email address. I'll drop it in the chat if you want to have more discussion about that. And I just want to thank you, David, and thank you, Janelle, because you guys are the start of all this conversation. And thank you so much for everyone who's supporting this project. Thank you.
Super. Anna, as I said, you were an early entrant to assisting. No?
No, good afternoon. I believe that in the presentation, just to clarify that grant was not approved. There were, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there were 80 proposals for that particular opportunity, and that was not one of the funded ones. But in the 1 or 2 minutes that I have, I'll just quickly highlight that in reference to a question that you asked about matching funds, we recognize that that's a significant challenge for accessing a lot of the federal grants. And so CFEI does offer a matching grant opportunity where we make up to $100,000 available for grants that require a match. It can't be because you brought a donor and they said, hey, I'd love to get these funds matched. It needs to be for a required match. Another thing just to put on people's radar is that we do offer scholarships for undergraduate and graduate students. So it might be something where we could talk about speaking with donors about interest in supporting scholarships specifically for this institution. And then finally, something that we started last year, as I realized that it's often ideal to have projects put directly in front of donors so that you can speak for yourselves instead of us trying to translate and share secondhand information. So one of the things that we can discuss is the possibility of having a donor education session for this project. And we can bring some donors that might be interested in supporting, and you can present it to them yourselves. So I'm happy to follow up with the team via email. Frandel knows where to find me. And thank you all so much for your presentation. It's very exciting.
Thank you so much, Anna. Well, Mary's comment to me here in the background, she says, we want to be sure to also credit the early entrants here, which were donations from a Danish NGO, owner of historic homes, who donated seed money. BYFO, I believe is the name of that organization. So just wanted to mention that too. So there are people who are already lined up and have helped. So this is fantastic. In closing, we just have a minute. We have heard from a variety of different federal as well as territorial resources and the foundation community, as well as an experienced developer of historic properties for creative reuse. And so we know it's possible. And we know that there are models around the United States that were mentioned here for workforce development programs that are really geared to developing the talent that we're losing just by the age of people and people more interested perhaps in technology. But we need to train these people for the preservation of these historic buildings in the US Caribbean, because they are absolutely part of the fabric and history of our communities. I want to thank you all very much for being present today. Again, thank the EPA for assisting us convening everybody. along with my colleague Joelle Greenland at C-Clear. And it's just been a delight. And I hope that these conversations will continue and that this isn't just a first. We have the opportunity to extend these kind of opportunities for other organizations in the VI and in Puerto Rico that may need them. And, we're in this special COVID moment, which is difficult and challenging, but I think we've made very good use of this technology. And I want to thank you all for being available, to being innovators and being present. We're just going to do a 30-second countdown. So just ask everyone to give a good smile as we log off here. And see you next in the closing session with Deanna James and Lori Showman. Thank you very much.